What is top of mind for all of you right now? What are you thinking about? What are the considerations that are big in your mind in terms of thinking about the fall in particular? Feel free to take it, anyone.
I'll just mention, this is Amy Petrin. I'm in the Donland, which is home to the Maliseet, the Micmac, Passamaquoddy, and Penobscot. And I feel like at this point, we're working with COVID as a condition of the environment, but it's no longer the only story, and it hasn't actually been the only story for quite some time. I think when we were talking on our pre-chat the other day, so many of us now are really, really not thinking about what the economy is going to be. And I that comment that we are all at close to 100% of our pre-COVID workforce, but we're at 50% of our revenue, that tied to the rising expenses really nails it. And so for us, it's really about how are we going to now navigate the economy. Feels almost bigger than COVID at this point.
Hi, this is Andy Cassano from Omaha Performing Arts, the homelands of over 27 different tribes who still reside in and around Omaha, Nebraska. That's very much the case. What Amy said is exactly true. COVID is still a condition which we know is out there. It has not been a factor of our decision making or really our operations having anything more to do than part-time work, which has been greatly influenced still by the changing dynamics of working. It's something that we're cognizant of, but there are so many things now that are impacting our business on a day-to-day basis. Supply chain is a huge issue. We just got notice from our marketing department that there's a major printer shortage across the United States, like print hard copy, and our advertising firms need over 6 months of advance notice in order to start generating print projects for us. Supply chain demand, the recession. We've lost 4 tours so far because the cost to either tour across the United States or to get into the United States from shipping costs from overseas has more than quadrupled, and so that's impacted us as well too. There are a lot of different things now that are so erratic in the data that we've been receiving on how we make judgment calls on our programming that doesn't even necessarily make any rational sense. Shows what you think will do well because they have had a history to do well. Some do and some don't, even within the same week. And so being able to read the tea leaves for how to program has become exceptionally challenging. And I'll pause there.
There we go. I was stuck in the world of being muted. So I live in Reno, Nevada. I'm a white woman with short curly hair, unlike my photograph, which had long straight hair. And I am wearing a black top. And I come to you from the unceded lands of the Washoe, Paiute, and Shoshone tribes. We are actually a little bit different because we're in the middle of our season right now. So what I'm noticing in the middle of the season is artists are really, while they're in the middle of touring right now with inflation and the rising costs of resources and airline tickets, we are noticing that artists are really, really strapped, looking for any extra penny that they can find. But unfortunately, we work on a budget, being a nonprofit entity, and it's not like we can just magically make more money appear for these artists. So it's really been a dance. Our events are primarily free. We do have some headliner events, and ticket sales have done extremely well. But I would say that right now our audiences are plentiful. There are many, many people who want to come out and want to gather together and be together. So I think that's very encouraging for people who have seasons starting in the fall. People really do want to gather together. So the opportunity to create environments for dinners and shows and all this kind of thing, I think is a really great opportunity for everyone. We're just noticing, we've actually, I think the one thing I learned from COVID was we always just had our season, or we had what we had, and it was what it was. And with COVID, we learned we had to change everything. And I think what COVID has taught me is not to be afraid of any change. And I have actually added venues, creative venues. I mean, we're not afraid to just recreate something and make it better. And I think COVID is, that's one of the shining parts of COVID. It's really taught us to take those risks in creativity. And it really has paid off this year. I would say that a lot of people were concerned with security around COVID and making sure people had masks on, and all of that was in place. For me this year, the art piece is the easy piece. Probably the most complicated piece for me is public safety. We have EMTs at every single one of our events. We have security. We've beefed up security at every one of our events. We are outdoors, so we're more vulnerable. But look what's happened in schools. And I think that public safety is a really big headliner of our industry right now. I've heard stories of shows having to stop because audiences are fighting with one another. So I would say that even though the survey is very relevant, we're not just pivoting anymore, we're spinning on a top, and we're changing daily. So whatever's good today is different tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you all. Really great insight. And you've all touched on this in one way or another, but can you tell us a little bit more about the specific impacts of climbing costs on your organization, on the artists that you're negotiating with, all those sort of things?
It's kind of across the board in terms of the rising cost piece. I think that the part that I think we're really wrestling right now is ticket pricing. It's a very tactical thing, but it's a very real thing. We know that all of our costs have gone up. We know that the costs in the world have gone up. At the same time, we're really concerned about either just raising ticket prices because we know we need to do it when everybody else out there is scared of the economy and inflation and gas prices. So that's one of the really hard numbers that we're dealing with right now. And I think the other thing I just want to tag on to what was said earlier too about the staffing piece is that several of our staff started in like 2019 and had not had a full season of what we thought was normal, what the prior normal was. So we're working with staff that are new since the pandemic, new right before the pandemic. So we're in a moment, it's kind of going back to what Andy said too, in terms of like all those processes and indicators that we used in the past. We don't even know which ones to pull forward at this point necessarily. I keep saying to Steph, oh, we used to do this, but you know what, it doesn't really matter anymore. Don't worry about that spreadsheet. So we're really also just trying to figure out how to work with staff. And also there's a fair amount of exhaustion still happening and burnout with staff, and figuring out that piece of it, and working with different generations of staff who have different expectations of what a work day looks like or a work week looks like. So we've been a little bit challenged there as well. Several of us are sort of veterans that just do it till it's done. And then we have to figure out how do we take care of each other and other staff who, you know, rightfully so, are trying to have a life-work balance when we're just keep burning out. Because I think what Beth said, everything's possible now, but everything takes several rounds before it's done, because you have to redo in different ways. There's no more automatic.
Yeah, and I've also noticed that on many tours, and of course we have a ton going on in the summer, tour managers are changing daily. And the tour manager that takes over from the previous person has had no communication, has not read the contracts, has not read everything that's changed. And we are having to work with different artists with tour managers like 3 and 4 times over. It's really complicated. And sometimes the tour manager ends up being the drummer. I really think that they're all artists are trying to cut costs where they can, and it's a really challenging to build a relationship between the artist and the presenter, trying to get everything done on the rider, and technically it is complicated right now.
I'd like to connect a couple of these dots if I can, Amy, Beth, back to what Andy said about thinking about revenue, and Amy, you suggesting that there's not a lot of price elasticity. I think everybody knows costs are going up, and if it's going up at the gas pump, why shouldn't it be going up on the face of the ticket? And then Beth, your point about everybody's trying to figure out how to constrain costs. And it's a really interesting question to me. I wonder, is anybody talking to audiences, either formally in a quantitative way or a qualitative way, about what their willingness is to see price increases?
I just see that the audiences are so excited to be back. We did raise our ticket prices for the headliners that we have in July, and we've pretty much sold out all of our shows. I would say the word gratitude amongst audience members is key right now. Never, and I've been doing this a while, never before have I had so many people come up and thank me for what we do. So I think gratitude is a huge piece. And as you guys all go into your fall programming, I think you'll see that people are just so grateful to be back out.
I think it's a careful balance, because there's a level of frustration about increased costs that are going up just to come to the concerts as well too. Like in the area, we found out just last month that the parking district has raised their rates by 400%. There's so many different restaurants that have come and gone right downtown. So, I mean, the ease of being able to come to the programs, we want to make sure are as easy as possible, and that they don't necessarily see us sweat but also making sure that if people ask, that they're more well-informed. I mean, the security cost, as Beth was talking about, we've had here too. We do a number of big outdoor concerts that are free for 10,000 people each night. And we updated, as soon as the event in Chicago happened, we updated all of our crisis communications. And we now have, I admit it, we have snipers and fully armed police guards who are visible at these programs where they never were before. And it's noticeable. People have come up and noticed about us. Now, thankfully, the chief of police of the city has actually named the event as an official city event, so that all of the overtime gets taken care of by the city. So we don't have to pass any of those costs. So it's a delicate balancing act. By, we don't really want to talk about that to the public, because we want them to feel safe and taken care of. But there are places where we've been dabbling a little bit with what can be more tolerable in a price increase. It tends to be the more expensive concerts already. It's the mid-level programs and the lower level programs that we're not touching at all. And in some cases, taking a little bit on the chin, because we're still trying to nurture that base of trying to still take a chance on programming that people aren't necessarily familiar with just by the name, because that's where the most price sensitivity and risk sensitivity is.
I'm wondering, thank you for that really great lead in, Andy, about price and cost and risk. Because I'm curious how all of these factors that, none of us have control over in terms of the economic drivers and the cost of things, airlines, transportation challenges, how is that impacting your decision-making, your risk ability, and both now and how do you see it impacting your future as you're going into a booking cycle?
One thing that we're noticing, and I think I've heard it, but I'll say it maybe a different way, is that whenever we're in a place of crisis, it feels like the haves and have-nots and the divisions and the gulfs get wider. So it's kind of speaking to what Andy was just saying about price sensitivity. Like we can play with the top prices, but we're leaving the lower and mid-range prices down because we know that there's sensitivity there. And if we do that, we're only going to have less audiences for those types of programs. Whereas on the other end, we can you know, I mean, we just went through the other day with my marketing director and I, we just went through and raised all of our Broadway prices. And we raised all of the sort of headliner stuff. And then we left everything else alone because we wanted to, just like Andy said, nurture and provide access. That's the other thing that's really becoming a challenge too. I think one of the things I've seen a lot of people doing, which I think makes so much sense, is building out ticket structures that are really expansive. So if you can get $100 or $200 from a couple hundred people, great, but make sure you have some $20 and $25 tickets on the other end and then fill it in. So I think that's been a great adjustment for a lot of people. But I'm also just concerned about it was in the materials, the commercial, what people are interested in is the commercial appeal. They're interested in the escapism of the theater. And I am concerned because that's not necessarily what our organization is dedicated to. And I'm concerned that there's less of it. So Broadway and what's coming down and off of Broadway is more, harder and harder to get. We're making decisions like we did not do Book of Mormon as much as it hurt our finances. We made a decision based on our core values not to do that. So we're also just trying to now figure out what the risk taking is as an organization, in line with values, in line with audience appetites, in line with audiences, pocketbooks and wallets. All of those things I think are also really under review and need a whole new way of thinking about it. And I'm just concerned that we've lost a lot of artists who aren't able to continue touring. Some of the smaller companies, some of the more fringe companies. And so I don't know what the next year to 2 years is going to look like in terms of what we have to put on our stages. And that also concerns me.
The one thing that we have not talked about, which I know is really important to APAP, is the ready component. And with all of this, making sure that you have ticket pricing that is accessible to people. We are still, in our organization, making sure that the conversations are rich and deep and very diverse. So even though we still continue trying to sort of redefine or figure out how to do business, making sure that that access, inclusive, diverse piece stays as part of our DNA as an organization is really important to me. We're bringing Dance Theater of Harlem. We are bringing out Virginia Johnson to have a conversation with people so that we can talk about the richness of what that all means. So even though we're trying to figure out the presenting piece, there's all this other deeper information and that we're trying to accomplish in addition to just getting back on the road, so to speak. And so that adds another layer, but that is the piece that feeds my soul as well. And I think it's really important to keep that as front and center of the conversation as well.
So if I might
guess-
push that one forward. I'm sorry, Andy, go ahead, you first.
What I would add, I think the conversations that we're having here in Omaha and the presenting here that we're doing in Omaha, especially when it comes to things that align with IDEA or DEI initiatives, are actually pretty robust. And we are doing a careful balancing act about the best time and the best places that we have these conversations with our communities, with our artists, but that they're consistently happening. Sometimes they happen in a smaller group as opposed to in a larger group. But we are making sure that we're doing at all times, whether it's more, for lack of a better term, entertaining and relief oriented as opposed to critical observations, is that we are continually elevating marginalized voices. It doesn't matter who they are, we're just always continuing to do that. And we are making sure that we have that as a budget item as well too, and that's calculated risk. And as much as we can offset that calculated risk with other things, that's a conversation we continually have. One of the other conversations that we're having more with an organization our size, which is relatively large, is to make sure that all the departments know what's at stake here when we do those challenging programs, or those programs that are supposed to engage more audiences as opposed to sell tickets, and that there's an understanding across all the departments. And as much as we can engage those artists in making sure that we're bringing here for something very specific, to take a risk, to have a conversation, and what that means when we're negotiating budget, when we're negotiating schedule, and how we use their time when we get here to maximize those opportunities or conversations that we're having in a more robust way that's never really happened systematically across the organization that they have before. The thing that's the most concerning to me in the last couple of weeks is what I've been noticing is a loss of creative capital. The couple of the shows that we've lost, and we've lost at least 4 tours. 1 or 2 were more commercially driven, Broadway driven, but or Broadway-esque driven, but 2 were from companies that were coming in from across different parts of the world. And when I started to look at programs that could replace that program that we had lost of a similar type of vein, and what I'm sort of alluding to, again, are the things that are a little bit more wild and wacky, that are things that we're looking for that don't necessarily fit a particular mold or a particular genre. I'm noticing right now a disturbing lack of those programs that are even available, because the artists either lost their job, they left the field, they're not able to get into the country, or we just don't have the ability to support those tours coming across the United States. So I'm not putting it all on the artist. We have some, culpability, for lack of a better word, as well too. But when I look at that type of programming and those things that we used to see to fit into those things, the more like spectacle type programs that are very artistically creative, it's not out there. And that's really worrisome to me, because as Amy aptly said, there are a lot of concerns about what's coming on the road over the next couple of years, even from the commercial side of the business, but also from what our creative capital is broadly, I think is disturbingly lost over the pandemic. And I don't know that I see it coming back for another couple of years. And that's even worrisome to me.
I'm struck, one of the reasons I love my job is that, just seeing the ecosystem and how like the push-pull impacts everybody. So I'm curious about how this is sitting for self-represented artists, agents, managers who have rosters with, of course, they're all interesting and amazing artists, but have, unique niche work. And how is this playing out for you when you hear presenters that are like, I want to make sure that we at least have variety and access to really interesting work. And you're concerned about how you're able to maintain your rosters and make sure that there's connections. I'm just, I know we have a lot of people on the call. So if you have a thought about that, or, a perspective on that, we'd love to see your thoughts about that at the chat. And then I wonder if there's anything that those folks would want to ask these presenters, like, are there things that you feel like you need to hear or understand better as we move into the booking cycle? Likewise, our panel, are there things that you feel are really important that your colleagues in the management, agent, and artist realm need to hear? What do each of you need to be able to be successful to move forward?
I'm going to say something that Amy and Beth have both said, but I think it's worth re-emphasizing. We've always been busy. This has always been a difficult and tough and challenging field that we love and we embrace. The challenges beyond just saying the word recession and economy, those are 2 things that are impacting our business. But what people don't necessarily see, and both Amy and Beth have said it a couple of times, is the multiple challenges that we have never necessarily faced before that are impacting us literally every single day, that we have never thought about, that we continually pivot on, that we challenge our staff with, that exhaust us to the nines, are very real. And to understand that when it comes to us talking about it, about how it fits the challenges of our season, it's not to say that you all don't have equally difficult challenges. It's not, but it's gotten much tougher, much quickly, and much more consistently. And I think it's worth re-emphasizing because there are just new challenges that we never thought we had to even think about that now we're doing every single day.
So Andy, I think building on that, maybe as a last question, Krista, as we come to the top of the hour and before we turn it back to you for next steps. I'm really intrigued by kind of this three-legged stool that all of you have described. Really, really intense sort of cost and revenue challenges, sort of factors, sometimes in your control, sometimes not. The desire to be the mandate to be accessible and equitable and engaging, and the complexity of running your businesses today. And not to suggest that any of you should end up with hair that looks like mine because of that. But what is the number one thing you're doing to solve for it at a macro level? Is there any sort of one practice that you would share as advice to the field that's helping you manage that complicated calculus?
Well, as I'm in the middle of my season right now, I would say to that exact point, expect the unexpected and just roll with the punches, because there's nothing else you can do. And that's what we do so well. I mean, the things I've had to create this month and problem solve this month have been, you just can't call it. And I would say just roll with the punches. We all are very capable of doing that. And we're in a business where it's ever changing and problems are very, very different now.
Amy, Andy, any big thought?
Not a big thought, but it's the one of not getting off of any conversation or misconception that there's something that's ever going to be called a return to normal. Because I think that unmet expectation is also really tiring. And to know this just is the new norm. And then I think I really appreciate what Andy said earlier too, about just the communication across staff of mission and values is so important, because you've got to have that in your heart and soul. If you don't have that, it makes you really wonder why you do what you do all day long, and take some of the hits we do. So we just have to really realize we are in a creative industry and we just have to continue to be creative, and it's not going to ever be what it was. I don't think it is. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, because there's some good things that are coming out of this too. But from the standpoint of any kind of roteness or automation is something we just have to let go of for at least the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think we're sort of echoing on what both Beth and Amy have said, and pulling something out of it is that for all the challenges that we're talking about, we all still love this job. We all still love this work. And it is only really that passion and that fire that we all kind of like talk about it. In some ways, maybe we took for granted, maybe we didn't, but I still get up every day. And even though I know that I'm going to walk into the office and face new challenges that are different and move from the next day, I'm really excited about the next day. And, somebody said it in the chat about the return to in-person, in live performance. There is absolutely no doubt about it. That's right. There are people who, want to come back out again. And part of our job is making sure that we still encourage people who were locked down and have not come out from behind their mask, or have not come out into the public, and have not come out for whatever reason to re-engage with humanity again. That reminding us that is why we exist. So yeah, today's the 20th, tomorrow's the 21st. Get ready, folks. But man, at the end of the day, we're still moving towards getting people back together again. And that passion and that drive is still really important to make sure that we keep alive and healthy within our teams.
Thanks, Andy. And we're right at the top of the hour, but I do want to acknowledge, Jody, your comment, which I think Andy just reinforced about the difference between the live performance and other. And I think that's a topic we want to talk about. Our audience research data tell us there's a very, very small percentage of the audience for which live will remain, streaming or online will remain the core of their activity. but they're a piece of what's going to be, we believe here at AMS, a missing segment of the audience going forward, which goes to Amy's point, which is there is no return. This is a reset. We're entering into a different world. Michelle, thank you too for your comment in the chat, for presenters to help agents and managers know what gaps they're trying to fill and to work together. I think, you know, without flattering our colleagues at APAP, you guys have a huge role, of which this is part of, to activate this conversation between the parts of this economic system so that we can think about the future in a really different way, and we can solve for now rather than trying to get back to before, because that's certainly not going to happen. As I always do, Krista, right before I give it to you, a real thanks to Jesse and Asia, our interpreters today. We really, really appreciate you being part of this. We know we talk fast and make it difficult for you. So thank you very, very much. And back to you, Krista.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for raising that up. So appreciate our friends at Purple Communications. And we so appreciate all of you, Stephen, Christian, Beth, Amy, and Andy. Thank you so much for being here today and for illuminating different facets of kind of how we're working and amidst the backdrop of this endemic. And we're so pleased at APAP to be able to provide forums and platforms for us to connect and learn from each other as we forge new normals, because we can't do it on our own. So thank you for being here. Thank you all for participating. I think we will have a survey that we'll put into the chat, but I want to just do a plug for the current survey that's out right now. It's deployed to self-represented artists, agents, and managers. It will close this Friday. We might keep it open a little bit longer, but like everybody needs a deadline. So please, if you haven't filled it out by July 22nd, please do so now. We did have a question. I just want to let you know, Stephen, one of our colleagues on an APAMA call said that they were having trouble. They felt like it was challenging for them to fill it out as a multi-roster agency. And I'm not quite sure what that meant, but I want to just raise that up. If other people have filled it out that have multiple rosters and are finding that challenging, we would love to hear more about that so we can ensure that we accommodate that, because we want your voice to be present and we want to understand what's happening. So with that, 4:03, sorry we're a little late, but thank you so much for coming, and we hope you have a great rest of the day and a great week. Thanks so much for being here.